Citizens of the universe, it is time for episode 19 of the Neutral Lens podcast. Another week is in the rearview mirror, and we have some new topics to discuss. Let's get into it. Before we begin, if you guys have any questions you want answered, topics you want discussed at Neutral Lens Pod on all socials, I'll get to it in a future episode. Question number 1. So this person has some trouble sticking to their New Year's resolution. Basically, they just want to spend 1 hour each day reading, but they're having trouble finding the motivation to consistently do that. And he's just wondering, what should he do to keep himself in check and to make sure he sticks to that resolution that he wants to, but again, is kind of having trouble doing so. So motivation, like the biggest thing about it is it's really just about what interests you. Like in the sense that did you come in with a list of certain books or maybe certain topics that you wanted to read about? And if so, then just picking books from there and reading about a topic that you're actually interested in will give you more motivation to actually do that. But if you didn't really have a list, then you don't really know what to read, and you don't have this interest in going down a specific direction. So you end up just kind of sitting there not knowing what to do, and you don't do it and you don't enjoy it either. So if you don't have a list, I would spend some time developing one, and maybe that could be your hour of reading. It doesn't have to be straight reading. It could be research about reading, where you can spend that time to figure out what you want to read next and make a list if you haven't already. Like you don't have to read every day. Like sometimes you will just burn out, and I think it's more important for you to take breaks where necessary if you have to, than to say, oh, I have to do this every day, so I will, and burn out, lose interest, and then just you don't find it fun anymore. And at that point, like, what is the point? Because it's supposed to be enjoyment. You're supposed to have fun with it, and you're supposed to find self-improvement. But if you don't enjoy it, something that you really don't have to do, you're not going to get the self-improvement from it. So, just don't force yourself to strictly adhere to that. I know I've talked about before, like, going to the gym, you have to be consistent with it. But, and that means that you should be trying to read consistently, but it doesn't mean that you should go when you're just straight up not enjoying it. You should only do things and try and consistently do things that that you have some sort of end goal, or like you'll have a lot of fun doing it. And like even like if you're, for example, you're reading, but you're not reading the right topic and you're not enjoying the topic, like if you just want to have some self-improvement, you want to read some finance books, you should be legitimately interested in learning about the finance and that aspect of it, instead of just reading for the sake of reading it because you think it's what you should read. Because you're not going to remember anything. You're not going to find it interesting. You're not going to have fun. And it really won't do you much good to read those things rather than something else that might actually interest you and teach you something, because you're going to be paying attention and you're going to remember. And like, for example, even a series or like a book that you've already read, going back and rereading it could be your hour if that's something you're interested in. Hey, let me go see what else is in there that I missed. And it doesn't even have to be some sort of like self-improvement book. It could just be like Harry Potter, or The Hunger Games, or Maze Runner, or something like that, or Percy Jackson. It just find something that interests you and go read it, even if it's something you've already read in the past. And you want to, if you want to be able to keep your motivation up, you don't have to force yourself to do certain things that maybe you're not interested in. Another good way to kind of re-pique your interest is to spend some money on it, if you have the money, of course. Investing money is like really a good way, to be honest, to mold your brain into wanting to invest time as well. Because if you don't put money into anything, you don't have stakes in it. But once you put money into something, you really want to use it. So if you bought something with your own money versus if you got if you got something gifted, it might just sit on your shelf, whatever it is. But if you actually bought it with your own money, you're probably going to use it, right? So it's the same thing. Like a lot of people will take stuff for granted. Like if your kids take stuff for granted because you're the one buying it for them, and then as soon as they go out on their own and they start making their own money and they have to buy it on their own, that's when you notice they start to appreciate it a lot more. But yeah, it really just comes down to wanting to do it, and there there are some strategies like spending some money, just finding ways to keep it interesting, making a list of books. But yeah, good luck. All right, next topic is actually another question. I normally don't do multiple. But there's this mom wondering how to tell her son, who is around early high school age, and he's addicted to video games, he doesn't want to do his schoolwork, that his poor grades are going to sink his chances at getting into a good college and make his life harder down the line. I'm gonna generalize it to more of like just how do I tell someone a harsh truth in general, but in this specific case, like I've been there. I really liked gaming as a kid, and it kind of bled into school time sometimes, and it would make me like not interested in school. I mean, I was also just not interested in school in general, but the first thing to recognize is that he does have alternatives outside of going to a nice college like an MIT or Harvard. There are very legitimate alternatives like trade schools or entertainment schools or just starting up your own business. Like, what are his interests outside of gaming? That is something that you really need to understand. Is like, outside of gaming, what does he like? Does he like sports? Does he like finance? Does he like, I don't know, just maybe some other physical activity? Does he have any talents that could really shine outside of a STEM environment, which is what most people go to school for? He does have a lot of alternatives, and finding those strengths that he has could give you sort of a direction to point him towards and pique his interest somewhere else. Now, he does have alternatives. Like, college honestly is debatably less necessary than before, where it's more just about a degree and a proven track record if it's like a good college. It's still a good path to make a decent living, and like there are a lot of career paths like being a doctor, where you do have to go to school and you do have to get into a good one if you want to be good. But it's not necessary, for example, to become like software engineer or something. Like, you can learn coding on your own. You don't have to go to a college for it. But yeah, okay. So how do you deliver this message to him? How do you have this conversation with him? Well, number one, it needs to be a serious environment. You need to have some sort of control over this, and where he doesn't sense that he's being like completely reprimanded, but he also senses this is a serious discussion. And like, just make it clear, because the last thing you want to do is get into an argument about this. That's the last thing you want to do. So like, wherever you pull him aside to, just be clear. I'm gonna say my piece, and I'm not going to interrupt, and you're going to listen. But then he's gonna have his chance to speak, and you're not going to interrupt, and you're going to listen. And giving him that respect to kind of push back a little bit, speak his mind, give his thoughts on it, and for you to really show that you're listening to him and taking that into account, that will open up his ears to what you have to say. The fact that you're going to listen to him and maybe give some ground somewhere, explain your thoughts, let him explain his, and try and meet in the middle. If he's just stubborn about it, there's not really much you can do, but that's really the only way you can avoid some sort of major conflict. Because again, like, this is something that if he has to hear it, you don't want him to go into it with a mindset of like not really accepting what you have to say. So that's number one. But like, okay, there's like a fine line between you just being tough on him and just being straight up mean, like being overly harsh. He's not going to respond to that kind of overly harsh talk. He's going to like, his tense up and going to get defensive. But also, if you're too soft and you're trying to give him too many alternatives and not really like letting him find a direction of his own, he also might not respond to that because he doesn't understand the gravity situation, and you're also not giving him like the control to kind of choose his own outcomes. So you want to be able to support him in whatever decision he wants to make, but at the same time, you need to be like super direct. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't beat around the bush. Like, hey, we need to talk to you, and just lay it out and say like, this is the reality situation of you and your video games and how it's going to affect you. But here are the alternatives. But like, just, you need to understand this. Like something along the lines of like, look, if you keep doing this, right, your grades are going to tank, and that means you won't be able to get into a good college. It'll make your life harder if that's the kind of career path you want to take. But if you have other career aspirations that are realistic, like not gaming, like it's really hard, then it's not completely necessary for you to aim for like a Harvard, but you still need to focus less on video games. Otherwise, that window is also going to close because you haven't spent enough time working on your career aspirations. And I will support whatever career path you choose, but as of this moment, you aren't really going anywhere. There's nowhere for me to support. So, like maybe not directly like that, but just the general idea of that. And it's important for you not to gaslight. Like you can't say something like, if you don't believe me, that's fine, because that's going to make people not want to believe you. Teenagers are very rebellious. Teenagers are very sensitive to that kind of thing. If you are gaslighting, or if you're kind of just saying stuff like, you'll thank me in 20 years, it's going to make them really upset, and they're not going to want to listen to that. So that kind of stuff is only going to make things worse. You really have to sit down in a way where you let them kind of make their own decisions, and you don't try and force them down a certain path. But at the same time, you want to really let them know the gravity situation, what the options are, things like that. All right, that'll do it for that. Let's do one last topic, which this one's pretty fun. How exactly do you win America's Got Talent? So I actually don't have the answer to like how do you win AGT. Like you just have to be good at what you do. But I feel like a lot of people don't exactly go into it with the right mindset if they actually want to win. Because it seems like there's a lot of auditions that seem like really good, but then you just never hear from them again, because a lot of people just have these big wow factor auditions. And that's if you just want some TV fame and you just want to show off for one round, that's totally fine and that's cool. But like if you're actually entering the competition to win it and go for $1 million, you cannot do a one-off act, because it can't be repeated. And if you try and do something else, maybe it's not as cool. So like it's really, really unique acts, or something that you can't top and take even further, is really dangerous, because it just ends up resulting in you like going on the next round. Ben Langley, actually this is from Britain's Got Talent, so I guess just like Got Talent shows in general, but like Ben Langley is a good example of this, where he had a fantastic act. It was like a comedy thing where he kind of misheard lyrics, and it was a great act. He was very funny doing it, but how do you replicate that? Like, is he going to go into more of a traditional stand-up comedy, and how is that going to translate? Because his first act was much more just him like kind of goofing around. And like, will it wow a live audience? Will it wow an audience when you do a live show? Because again, the other thing is like, you're not only winning $1 million from it, you're winning a show that you have in Vegas. Is that still a thing they do? I don't know. But like that show won't draw viewers if you're kind of just doing something that you can't do for long. So like magic acts, singing acts, those guys have a lot of potential or like comedy, because you can have long routines and they can be very, very varied. But something like a very one-off thing, like the Ben Langley act, it's not really going to wow anybody besides that one audition, So you need to find something with a lot of variability, things like singing, magic, comedy. There's a reason like those are popular. It's because those kinds of acts are places where you can kind of give an introduction and then be able to top it as you go down the line. Like that's another mistake a lot of people make is they put their best foot forward in the initial act, and you aren't ever really able to top it, versus just giving the judges and the audience kind of a teaser or like a taste of what you're made of in the first round. And then as you're able to progress through the rounds and the live shows, that's when you save your real routines, your real acts, like the big ones that you're really proud of. And you save them for that, where you can really elevate as the show goes on. Because to be honest with you, like if you are actually good at the thing that you're doing, the talent, it's not hard to get through the first round. So if you actually have some sort of realistic shot at winning, then you don't have to do some crazy thing in round one. You can just kind of show your stuff and show them your potential, and then they vote yes, and you move on. And that's when you really start to give them a bigger and bigger acts as you move towards the finals. Like if you're ever in a position where you feel like your top of the line thing is what's necessary to move on to the next round, you're not in a position to win. You're not in a position to win. So you have to always have something better stored up for the finals, because that's when you need to show your best stuff. You need to be able to keep elevating as you move towards the final. And if you can't do that, then other people will. So yeah, it honestly just comes down to being able to vary your act at the same time while like not completely losing the magic of the first audition. Because again, like if you just do the same thing over and over again, people are going to get bored of it. But if you do something crazy and then you show them something underwhelming because that was the best you got, then, you know, especially a judge like Simon, he's going to see that and you didn't elevate, and they're not going to let you through to the next round because you have nothing better. So yeah, picking the right talent, picking the right act, and yeah. All right. I think that'll do it for this episode. Thank you guys for listening as always, and I will see you next week.